What do you get when you take a former manager plus report combo who are now real life friends, one a management coach and sudden viral internet star who shoots from the hip, and the other a CX exec turned advisor who overthinks everything? This podcast. Welcome to the Business of Humans. I'm Joe, founder of CX Joe Advisory and the Overthinker. My partner in crime is Lynda. She's the founder of Leveled Up Leadership and the Internet Star. Join us as we talk about business, relationships, humanity, success, and also failure through the lens of friendship, heaps of radical transparency and honesty, and zero BS. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hi, Joe.
Hello, Lynda. How's it going?
Good. I have to tell you, I was distracted for a minute. So, for the people who don't know, the platform we record in sometimes does like a freeze, or it catches like some random picture of us and it's over on the right-hand side of my screen. And sometimes the pictures that it captures, it's almost as good as my YouTube channel where I'm like, wow, YouTube did me dirty. But man,
Yeah,
Riverside did me dirty on this one. It's like, what is even happening in that? So I'm sorry, I was slightly
that's great.
distracted.
I think it's a classic example of ignorance is bliss because however I have mine set up, I'm not, it's bad enough having to see the live recording and my face is a part of that, but I don't, I think I would just completely break down and stop functioning if I was seeing these like still shots. It sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good
The
look for me. And
scene.
let me tell you, like, as I've gone down this journey of
Yes.
being very much more public about my life and who I
Hmm.
am and putting
Hmm.
my face out on the internet, I thought that I got really comfortable with like different levels of readiness, and
Hmm.
this screenshot is bad.
Linda, classic, unscripted, difficult question to throw your way 1 minute into the pod, but how do you think about that nowadays in terms of what to share, what not to share? We do the podcast together, but I'm also your friend. I'm also your follower on socials. So it's a pretty common experience. I'm pick up my phone. I'm like, wow, look at Linda go, sharing X, Y, or Z. I mean, I think, I really admire the way that you talk about your, like all your career adventures, including times you've been wronged. And I have too. And we talk about that, but then it bleeds over a little bit into family life. Like, how do you think about what to share, what not to share?
Yeah, so I've gotten a ton of feedback on both sides of the aisle, in the sense of share all of the things about your life and family, share none of the things. And I approach it, I think, the same way that I kind of approach when I'm at work, right? When I'm at work, like, I'm going to tell you some stuff, and I'll tell you, like, if you don't know the names of my children when we're at work, like, I haven't done my job. Because, and in fact, I think one of the first meetings you and I ever had, when you and I were sitting down, I actually remember I was in a phone booth at the kiln, and we were having a conversation. I said, hey, I'm going to talk about my kids a lot because they're my favorite people. And so, I leave a little bit less of that on social media because they are underage, and I feel like I don't need to share. It needs to be up to them. I've watched a lot of information from young kid influencers who have kind of entered into adulthood and talked about their experience and talked about how they really didn't have the consent to
Mm-hmm.
share their lives. So I do my best to not
Mm-hmm.
share my kids on social media, but we talk about them here on the podcast every now and then. We talk
Yeah.
about the fact that we are parents, that we're both have spouses, like, so I share some of those things, but I do think that there gets to be a version of me that's just for me. And I think when you are out in the public eye, and I'm not saying that I'm like, I'm not Drew Barrymore yet, but when you are out in the public eye,
I
there
love that
is
you
some,
chose Drew Barrymore. That's great.
I think that she's like, she's also a mom and she's got a life and those types of things. But
She's
anyway,
very relatable and lovable.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I think in general, there's some that you share, right? And I think that you get the version of me on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think you come to the podcast and I think you get a more down to earth version of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside of the pod, there's also a different version of me. So I
Mm-hmm.
try and be really careful
Mm-hmm.
how much I share, but also really mindful of the fact that, my kids are not adults. And so sharing their information, I just don't think is quite right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So I mean, there's still layers to it and some method to the madness. and also sounds like a distinction between you, your own careers, like kind of at 11 out of 10 sharing at this point, which is amazing again, and a big part of, I think, kind of your professional brand and the value people get out of your content. And then family's different. It's a little more moderated. And it's thought provoking for me too. I mean, in addition to being the overthinker, I'm the oversharer as well. And I will say it's on my list of my long list of things I'm enjoying about advisor part of my career. So I overshare a lot. I still factor in the other person's experience because that's just like a empathetic, decent thing to do. If someone isn't as big a sharer as me, of course I like throttle it back a little bit. But to some extent, in your own boss, you get to kind of just make decisions about everything. I have a really close sort of client slash, I hope budding to be a friendship. And I spent the first like 3 minutes of our catch up telling him all about my travails at the dentist and the root canal I had to get the last week or two. And now I'm talking about the pot. It was terrible. It sucked. And at the end of it, I'm just like, why did I share all of that? It benefited our business relationship, but it's something we have in common each in our own way, is like just sharing and talking about what's on our mind. And to your point about your kids, like that's really sweet. And I think about my family the same way. Like my wife and my two kids are like kind of my three best friends, with all due
Mm-hmm.
respect to my friend best friends and other people. That's how it is. Like we spend some of our time with them. They're kind of my three besties, and I share what's on my mind. And it's part of just being genuine and
Yep.
sharing honestly.
Maybe we would say being human.
Being human. We are in the business of humans,
We are in the
after
business
all.
of humans. Yes. Yes. And we were sharing a little bit, and I'll share this a little bit on the pod before we started, because we catch up before, and I had a really tough week,
Yeah.
right? Like I had a really, really tough week. And you were like, "Well, Linda, like why did you have a tough week?" I'm like, "Man, being a parent," and I won't share explicit details on things, but I have children who are teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they don't lie when they say the teen years are tough.
Yeah.
Like those are tough, tough years. And
This scares me. It's going to
this
be
week was no
8 or 10 years in the
exception.
future for me. Terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I've got teens, and the challenge is it's so interesting because, when they enter into the world, you're concerned about like, them breathing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
their movement and their breathing, right? And then it's like, are they developing at the rate? I was telling a story the other day. My pediatrician seriously traumatized me because my son, when he was small, was a small kid, right? He was underweight, and he was always in the low percentiles, and my doctor's like, "You're not feeding him enough." And he was just like browbeating me into like saying that I wasn't feeding my kid enough. And so I literally, the child from like age 1 until almost 4, we were like, not only was he having breakfast, and we gave him like oatmeal for breakfast, like a substantial breakfast, he was also getting a Carnation instant breakfast, which is tons of calories,
Mm-hmm.
tons, like he was probably having 600 calories for breakfast.
Yeah.
Well, that feels excessive, but it was a high calorie count for a small person. And I was just like, we were force feeding him. I would like hide tofu and things. I would like grind up
Mm-hmm.
tofu, and I would like hide it in the food because he's like, he needs more protein. And my pediatrician is just like all of the time, every time he sees me, right? So then comes my second child, and we go to the 1 month appointment, and he's like, "Oh, apparently you just have small babies." And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, you just told me that I'm not feeding my
Call it
child
off.
enough."
Call off the
Yeah.
campaign.
He's like,
We're all
"Oh,
set.
apparently they're just small." And I was like,
Yeah.
"I hate you," which is funny because we actually really like our pediatrician, and we'll be sad when my kids don't need to go to him any longer because he's just delightful. But anyway, so you have these different worries as you go with children, and the worries just get different and still big, right? So it's not as frequent. Like, did you roll over? Are you breathing enough? Do I need to get the snot sucker? Like all of those
Mm-hmm.
things that you think about when they're really small. And now it's just like, I don't know. Where are you going? Who are you going to go with? Are you going to be safe? So needless to say, it was a tough parenting week for me, like a
Hmm.
really tough parenting week for me. But then I thought, well, that feels like it really, I tell people all of the time, parenting, manage. So we froze for a minute.
So, like you said, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And my version of that this morning was with the 4-year-old and getting him to wake up and eat anything for breakfast. And we were having meltdown after meltdown, so different points in the journey. But my other reflection, when we first started chatting and now you're sharing on the pod, is I think that, okay, so I'm really big on like, we all talk about like, okay, the world's going to crap, for all these
Hmm.
reasons. But since it's my job to be the optimist as well, or look at
Hmm.
the bright side, there are certain things like trends in society we're living through that I think are wholly positive that we should also reflect on. So I also just find it's really good that it's getting more normalized to start conversations, whether it's just us two catching up or on the
Hmm.
podcast, or also in even way more public settings and people just saying, hey, I'm having a tough week, or like, yeah, most things are good and my physical health is great. I'm having a bad mental health week. I had another sort of client slash friend who, of course, I will never out, but who just, it's like part of we're talking about whatever work topics this week. And like, hey, how's your week going, by the way? And they said, well, I'm just having a really bad mental health week. And I was like, thanks for sharing that. And it was just so healthy to know that and to factor into our
Hmm.
conversations and me trying to be there for them as a friend. And I told them too that it recalled for me as the sports fan and as my
Hmm.
hometown basketball team, the Knicks charged through the playoffs. One of their most likable players, Mitchell Robinson, everybody loves this guy, and he just chose to share like during this playoff run. He shared his socials, which have tons of followers. He said, "Hey, I'm going through a really, really hard mental health chapter right now. It like this is what's happening. I don't even know all the reasons why, but I'm battling through it, and I appreciate everyone's support." And it was like, the team and the fans were able to kind of rally around him more, not knowing exactly what's going on, but he just shared that. And I think
Good.
just sharing that is brave
Yeah.
and helps. And
Yep.
I just think it's a good thing that we could go through our lives now sharing that, whether it's with friends or coworkers or the whole world in his case. And just thinking on like how that used to be so different, or I know this sounds
Hmm.
dramatic, but like how many lifetimes would pass with probably without that person sharing with another soul, just like going through it right now, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And I think that it speaks to, again, I think in this space where we have felt like we've really kind of lost that human piece, right? And especially at work where it feels like it has to be performative. Like,
Hmm.
oh, I have to come and put on a happy face. I can't. And sometimes it's okay. And again, I think it's really wise to choose your audience, right? I always tell managers, it's okay if you have a bad day. Like it's okay if you have a bad day, but you have to remember like you can't we can't throw that in your team space, right?
Hmm.
Because when
Hmm.
we think about the power dynamic at work and when we think about this space, I the worst some of the and I think this is a great springboard into our topic today, but some of like the worst managers that I've worked with, whether they've managed me or I've observed them, are the people that think that everybody needs to know what their problems are, or think
Hmm.
that they sit down with their team member and their team member's like, ah, things are really hard for me. And then the manager takes it over and is like, yeah, I know. You should hear about my struggles.
Hmm.
And I'm always like, that's really not the right audience. That's not the right space for you to come in and try and share your woes with your
Hmm.
direct report, right? Because first of all, we have to understand that from a direct report's point of view,
Hmm.
you could be the goal, right? Like your position, your
Yes.
place of power, what you're doing could be their goal.
Hmm.
And they also assume, often wrongly, that like, oh, well, you get paid the big bucks and then you're coming in here dumping your problems on me.
Hmm.
Even though like more often than not, as like a frontline manager or, a lower level, mid-level manager, the pay gap isn't that big, right? As you go further on that kind of executive journey, the pay gap definitely gets larger. And that's the other thing that you have to consider when you've got a significant pay gap between you and the person you're speaking to,
Mm-hmm.
and you're coming in and dumping your problems on
Yeah.
them. Like, this is not an equitable
Right.
relationship,
Right.
right? On
Yes.
so many levels.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, but I do think that there should be a space, or I think that even in that same breath, like, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth on this, but even in that same, it's okay for a manager to say, hey, you know what? I'm not in the headspace today. I can't tell you. There have been times when I've had to cancel one-on-ones where I'm just like, I'm really sorry. I don't have there are things going on in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have the space and attention to be able to show up for you the way that's in a way that's meaningful in this meeting. So I'm going to have to go ahead and cancel our one-on-one today. I don't do it often, right? I don't have those things often, but sometimes you just are like, I really can't do it today. I'm really
Yeah.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
I think both sides of the mouth make perfect sense in this case. I fully agree with both. Also, we're high level on the same page as always. I was gonna say to you, who you wouldn't want to share your mental health woes with, or you're having a bad week, a horrible boss. That person you wouldn't
Ugh.
want to share with. So yes, we're right into it. But I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a difference between a manager sharing on a human level, like, hey, I'm a human being too, and I'm kind of going through it today, or maybe I'll explain more when we catch up next, but I need the time back today. I'm really sorry, or like, let me know if anything's urgent. These kind of human. I think that's great, and it's being a human being if that's how you have to approach it that day. I think with the prior examples, what evokes for me, which are less good or acceptable for managers, one, there's a way of sharing one's own problems that is like passing the buck and removing accountability. That's
Mm-hmm.
not so hot. So let's say if you have a report, sharing their genuine challenges at work, and then if you as a manager, your response is like, "Oh yeah, and you should see how it is for me." I mean, I know, trust me, I'm trying to share the same stuff, and it's like it's going nowhere. And this is what happened, like in my exec leadership meeting, and just kind of derails the whole one-on-one with those. Like, that's not great,
Mm-hmm.
because as a report, you're just feeling like I need someone to have some accountability, or also to, like, honestly, to maintain a certain level of decorum and professionalism. I think actually does
Yes.
better for the report, having been on both sides of this. Um, and the other thing I thought about that you were getting at too is you also have to be mindful as a manager sharing your woes if they're not the same woes as your report has, and if there's that kind of, to your point, power dynamic, income discrepancy dynamic. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember if I shared this on the pod earlier. And again, of course, I never like matching it to people, but sorry to this boss out there, but a former boss of mine who, when I was really like, me and my team that I was managing were having a difficult time that weekend with just the flows of the business and customer conversations and so forth. And that manager like spent half of a call we were having, which was meant to be them checking in on what was going on in the department, and shifted into all the travails they were having of having home renovations and a big party they were hosting that weekend, and like managing 4 different crews of construction and party organizers, and literally was like sipping a glass
Jesus.
of wine as they walked me all through this. It felt to me like maybe their third or fifth glass of wine. It was just like, at a certain point I was like, wow, I didn't know we were going to have this podcast one day. But that's just an example of like what's it's like, oh, that must be nice. It's just like, oh, that must be nice.
Right.
So sorry
Right. Where
if
you're
you're
like, and
struggling
and
through that.
and the thing is like, yes, those are problems.
Yeah,
Those are
absolutely,
problems. But
definitely.
again, like, where is
Have
the
a filter
appropriate
though.
venue? Like, is this the appropriate venue? Is this the appropriate dynamic to share your first world champagne problems?
Right.
Right.
Probably not. Probably not. Probably not.
And I'm sure with you also knowing you, you were like, oh, that does sound really awful. That does
Oh
sound,
yeah.
and then you're going like, why, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, what?
It's tough.
Which is really interesting, because I find so often, no matter what the dynamic is, I always know what's going on with people in their life. There's something, I mean, my children say that I like squeeze the truth out of people. I
Mm.
don't know what it is about my presence. I don't know if it's people feel or understand that I'm pretty much as like little judgmental as I possibly can. I'm like, hey, listen, you've got problems, I've got problems, we've all got
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? And if you feel appropriate or you feel like this is the place to put it, like, okay, bring it on. We can talk about all of
Mm-hmm.
the things, right? So I do find that, but it's that self-awareness piece, I think, so
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
On the topic of horrible bosses, I think that so much of what feeds into people being a horrible boss, I don't believe that most people are malicious. I really don't. I believe that most people have good intentions. People want to be good humans. At the end of the day, they want good things said about them
Mm-hmm.
at the end of their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that most people act through intention. With that being said, I have had some people that I'm like, I don't think that you think forward. I don't think that you are capable of self-assessment. But I actually think that, and I spend a lot of hours a week counseling and coaching people and talking them through horrible boss situations and
Mm-hmm.
talking through, like, what does a horrible boss actually look and feel like, and is this a place where you're actually projecting your stuff, and
Mm.
let's talk about some self-awareness. And I really do think that a lot of the horrible bosses that are out there are people who just lack general self-awareness.
Mm.
What do you
Mm-hmm.
think about that?
I think that's 1,000% true. Lacking general self-awareness, and then like a kind of related thought that I was pondering as you spoke. Part of lacking the self-awareness, I think, is also the ability to diagnose one's weaknesses or improvement
Mm-hmm.
areas and then work to address them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a trend or like a general reality, a correlation with so-called horrible bosses and not realizing that management in and of itself is, an aspect of their work, their leadership, job performance,
Mm-hmm.
and an area that they might need to invest time in,
Yep.
and put the work into becoming better managers. Because to your point, I really, really push myself to not be critical of people just because they have weak points. I have a billion of them. But I think an interesting dynamic is a worse boss oftentimes doesn't understand or isn't willing to address those weaker areas, and especially when I consider softer skills, so to speak, that are
Mm-hmm.
absolutely critical, like human skills and management skills, to be an addressable area. So, for example, you might have a manager who would be very quick to dispense advice to someone saying, you need to get better with your data skills. You need to get better
Right.
leveraging AI. These are great examples of feedback areas that I had earlier in my career, let's say around like data and modeling and spreadsheets, because I was an English major. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. So I'd get
Mm-hmm.
that feedback, but to my credit, I'd work at it. I remember like in a job I had 10 years ago, like staying till 10 p.m. and working on the spreadsheet, or asking people for help and reaching out to industry friends, right? So whatever. So I tried to put some hustle in to get to an acceptable place of competency in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see some managers out there, including senior executives, to have that self awareness, or maybe to get feedback on an assessment and not just brush it aside and be like, oh, that's a crap that doesn't matter. It's like, no, it matters at least as much as, brushing up your skills
Yes.
and data and nowadays AI competency and all of that. Like, put some time and effort into becoming a better manager. And so I think, to your point, and to wind up my speech, I think that's where reports and whole teams start to get really discouraged. It's like when a senior leader has those discrepancies and just clearly isn't acknowledging them
Mm-hmm.
as improvement areas, or putting any work into addressing them.
Mm-hmm. Or, yes, and to this,
Mm-hmm.
or they treat it like a checkbox. So, for example, I think that you and I could talk about some of the people who have managed us in such colorful ways, but yeah, shade to this person, whatever. I don't care. I won't mention their name though. How about that? So I had a manager. It was not you, Joe. So there you go. I'll say
Come
it's
on.
not. I will
Come
tell the
on.
world it's not you.
Thank you.
But this manager and I, we had formerly been peers. And I
Mm.
think that that's really challenging. And one of
That's
the
always
things
tough.
that I coach people through a lot
Hmm.
is when they go from being a manager, like a peer, to a
Yep.
manager, because
Yep.
that dynamic changes so dramatically.
Right. In a heartbeat,
And
right? In an instant.
it's just, it's so hard. And no matter what, I think that there's always this piece of like, oh, you're on a power trip, right? But more often than not, these individuals are still kind of almost riding high of going like, oh, I was your peer and now I'm your manager and now I have all the power. There is a little bit of a power trip, if we will, that's going on.
Hmm.
But the worst kind of lack of self-awareness is when you have these moments where you do provide honest and direct feedback.
Hmm.
And I had had a situation where I had had just a full-scale meltdown. Like, and I don't, Joe, you've worked with me and you've known me for quite some time.
Hmm.
I don't have meltdowns often,
No,
right?
I would agree.
I don't have meltdowns often. I am usually very good at like compartmentalizing like what's going on. I will give direct feedback and I will say, hey, I don't agree with this, or I'm really struggling to understand this concept, or help me understand because I'm really, the logic isn't there for me, right? And you and I had had those conversations, but I had reached this point with this manager where I was done. And I
Mm.
was just like so overwhelmed. And I had done some really big things for my department,
Yeah.
right? I was the top of the department, so I was the decider of the department. And I had done some really good things and I had grown the department and I had really like made some really meaningful changes. And we would sit in staff meetings and this person would praise every single person but
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Every single person but me. And again, I don't need a lot of praise. I don't need a lot of accolades. I'm like, in fact, sometimes when I get it, I'm really uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't know, I was just doing my job. Like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. You just don't want
Uh,
to be egregiously slighted,
oh,
like aggressively slighted.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm talking significant department savings, like
Hmm.
more than almost triple my salary
Yeah.
savings,
Yeah.
right? I'm talking about taking attrition from 10% to a half of a percent.
Hmm.
I'm talking big things.
Yep.
And we're sitting in a meeting and they're oozing praise for my peer who put together a PowerPoint.
Hmm.
And I'm like sitting there like,
It's hard not to
what?
take it personally, right?
What
Honestly,
in the actual fuck? Like, oh, this PowerPoint was so effective and it was just
yeah.
so informative. And I'm like, really? That's rad. No praise, right?
Yeah.
No praise for like, and again, I don't need a lot. And I hadn't done anything big that week, so it wasn't a big deal, but I had never received anything, right? And
Yeah.
this person's
Yeah.
like, oh, the PowerPoint. So when I'm having this meltdown on this manager, and I'm like, listen, this is broken because our relationship is broken. This is broken because I don't respond to you because I don't think you're an effective leader. I may have been a little harsh. Um, or an effective leader for me. I didn't say it in general. I said an effective leader for me. Like, this is what I'm not getting from you. And I need you to understand, I don't need a lot of praise, but I have never received any from you.
Hmm.
I have moved this project, and this project to completion with no disruption to the business.
Hmm.
And I haven't, there's been zero notification, right? So let's fast forward to our next team meeting where I am still seething. Oh, oh, well, I want to take a minute to recognize Lynda. Like, she really showed up on this. Again, it was the most benign thing that I had done that week.
Hmm.
And it was just like, oh,
So well, I want to ask you about this. Do you? So first, I was going to kind of challenge you. Like, would it have been better if they didn't action the feedback or praise you at all? But I guess related to that is also the question of, did you feel like it was sincere?
No,
Or was
it
it
was a
like such a benign
checkbox.
thing? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a checkbox. It was, okay,
Mm,
well, you gave me that feedback and now I'm going to do this. And yet, in the next breath, after this meeting is over, I'm going
mm-hmm,
to make sure that you understand how worthless you are, how you're not doing things acceptably because they're not done my way.
mm-hmm.
Right. So it was literally a checkbox in a very public setting.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
oh, and also like her boss was on the call too,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Her boss would join like once in a blue moon. And so it was just like such a big checkbox, and it talk about insult and injury
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. And it's just like, if you would have found something genuine to talk
Yeah.
about, if there had been a genuine something I had done nothing that week. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing to discuss, but it was literally like, oh, well, the feedback was that I don't praise you, so I'm going to praise you. And there was a
Yeah.
check marks. Ugh.
That sounds pretty lazy. And like it might have been, honestly, like from Harry telling it, it might have even been obvious to the team that it was sort of performative or not sincere. You know, I'm picturing now like myself showing up to a meeting. It's like, hey, look at Joe. You know, he put on his shirt today. He showed up for the call. Like, let's get a round of applause for Joe.
What a
Or
big
maybe
boy.
even,
He
yeah,
ate his
told,
breakfast.
yeah, exactly. I might have even told your skip level, like, oh, Linda really needs some recognition. This reminds me of a really hilarious moment I had early in my leadership career. You know, I did learn from it, but this guy was definitely a horrible boss. He joined my first startup that looked to be doing, you know, off to the races.
Mhm.
And no, we had a great run. It didn't end up working out. It's no one person's fault, but this person who joined as a senior exec to kind of take us to the next level, like really torpedoed things. And I had a very hilarious moment with him where we were talking something through, and yeah, like an extreme lack of humanity and gratitude was probably needing me a little bit. And I guess he perceived that. And his way of dealing with that was to inform me. He's like, you know, you're someone who clearly needs a lot of praise and recognition. You know, I just want you to know that about yourself. And yeah, I've definitely noticed that. You know, it's not always going to work like that, but just kind of putting you on notice, you know, about it. And here's the thing. Again, I think it gets at what we expect out of leaders and out of bosses. Was what he was saying wholly untrue? Like, no. I mean, I'm sure
Yep.
there was some truth that I'm a sensitive soul. I like praise. I struggle, you know, with critical. All of those things are true and like represent some improvement areas for me as well. But at the same time, it's kind of funny, right? And
Yep.
when you strive to be a great leader and you get to know your team members, what makes them tick, they're, you know, you strategize, you push yourself in all the ways to make them tick, kind of quote unquote get the best out of them, but also develop
Hmm.
them as people and go on this rich journey together. So, you know, I could think of somebody from my past who I love who definitely was cut from the same cloth as me. You know, they wanted praise and feedback and recognition. So what I strove to do was to give them that because it fueled them and they deserved it. They're doing a kick-ass job. And then, you know, over the course of like months or years working together, you could work on those things together or bring it up that, you know, I like kind of try to train the person to have resiliency and to get ready for other bosses that might not be so kind. Anyway, whatever
Yep.
your thoughtful way is of dealing with that, probably not just like calling somebody out awkwardly
Yeah.
and then just letting
Yeah.
it sit in the air. But again,
Yeah.
these are just folks, they're just not. Kind of gets back to like other topics we've talked about over the pod of just like as people rise the ranks in an organization, you know, the person I'm thinking of right now, he's brilliant, way smarter than me, did great things in his career, just really never cut out to probably be a leader of people. And these
Yep.
things just get confused and conflated so often.
Yeah. And I think so often, to your point, people who find themselves in leadership, who have no business being in leadership, I think so often, like, I can't fault them for
Mm-hmm.
that, because I think so often, I think about my career, right? I was very intentional about going into leadership. I
Mm-hmm.
always knew that that was going to be the space for me. Like, I always knew, I was always chomping at the bit to try and become the manager. Like, I always wanted to be that person. And so I purposefully got myself there, right? Like, I went in it with intention. I always picked jobs where I felt like there was a path there, or the title was already there, right? And even as I grew in my career and later in, you know, and some people, and I think, Joe, you and I have had this conversation about some people are split on titles. And I was like, no, I'm not split on titles. Like, I absolutely want this leadership title.
Hmm.
This is what it looks and feels like. And I'm very intentional about that. And I do think that there are some people who rise to the ranks, and we can talk about, how that happens. They rise to the ranks and find themselves in leadership positions, and maybe they have no business there,
Hmm.
but it's the golden handcuffs, right? It's this golden handcuffs of like, well, I make a lot of money.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of privileges. I mean, I was literally talking to someone not too long ago, and they were like, they were dealing with a horrible boss. Again, because I talk about horrible bosses almost all day, every day,
Hmm.
right? And they were dealing with a horrible boss, and everyone in their life they were talking to would say, well, just quit. Just quit.
Hmm.
And they're like, I don't think you understand how much money I make. I don't think you understand like the privileges that this comes with. Like, I sometimes get to fly on private planes because I'm traveling with these executives, and that's awesome, right?
Hmm.
And I get to travel to places that I have never been because of the position that I sit in, right?
Yeah.
And so it is kind of these golden handcuffs. And so we spent time together really, number one, understanding that sometimes people find themselves in places of power. And one of the classic one of the classic spaces that you find people in positions of power that probably have no business being in power, but they are, is in kind of the founder space, right? When you've got a founder who's a founder and CEO of the company, right? And we could dissect and slice and dice the way that the life cycle of most companies, you start with a founder acts as the CEO. They do that for some time, and eventually they're either ousted by the board or they decide that it's not for them and they bring in like somebody who has the background, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of rocky years
Hmm.
in there for a lot of these founders.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's this person who probably had a really great idea. They were a disruptor. They were
Hmm.
somebody who really was capable and brilliant and so good
Yeah.
at this thing, and they created this thing, and then suddenly they have direct reports.
Hmm.
And I think that, that's definitely the extreme of how some people find themselves in leadership, and how a lot of bad bosses are really born, because it's like, I guess I manage people now,
Hmm.
right? But I think you find that even on other levels where somebody comes in, they work really hard. They're really good at what they do. They have tons of knowledge. And then someone says, you should manage some people because
Hmm.
you're so good at what you do. Here are humans that you're responsible for. And it is, again, back to the parent analogy, it's kind of like being a parent when they hand you
Yeah.
a baby and you're in the hospital for 1 to 3 days, depending on your experience. And they're like,
Hmm.
and here's a human, keep them alive. Bye.
Yes, yes. But in the case of a company, I mean, ideally, there's some preparation and some support for that moment. I guess ideally in life and as parents too. But back to business, I think what it goes back to, and you think about these founder progressions, like you're talking about, and as you know, I'm obsessed with all these stories, and both lived through and also just
Mhm,
hearing stories and my podcast obsession, all of it. You're right. It's a very, very common story. I think where the story where everything could still work out peachy is, so if you
mhm,
trace back to like as the business grows, ideally that founder CEO has the awareness to bring on one or more people around them who have the skills and the mandate, to do things like drive a great
mhm,
culture and drive great management and report experiences, drive a great workplace experience, even if it's not their superpower or what's in their purview to take care of. So bringing in a great people leader, for example, really
mhm,
early.
mhm,
Oftentimes great support or CX leaders could also help to build culture. Shout out,
mhm,
to the industry where we both came up. It's just true. Like great CX
mhm,
leaders oftentimes are great at creating great cultures as well. But most importantly would be bringing a great people or HR leader early, and then that person would then have a team possibly as the business grows. But either way, make sure that when new managers are promoted, they actually have training and
yeah,
resources and support, and maybe they get some training before their first one-on-ones, but then even probably more importantly, as they're having those first one-on-ones and big management moments, they're like, I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
or I think I really just screwed something up in my one-on-one. That's going to happen. But a
Hmm.
great organization, that person has a space, has a place they could go physically or on Slack or, whatever the case might be, and just say, hey, I need an assist. Like,
Yeah.
that didn't go well. I need help. And so that could, you know, creating that structure and that support network, I think could make the difference between what is allowable and is going to happen,
Hmm.
which is just like
Hmm.
development moments for new managers, but then are righted and improved, and or versus could be actually a toxic workplace and
Yeah.
that person staying a horrible boss.
I totally agree. And sadly, the thing that most companies don't invest in is training for their managers.
Mm-hmm.
Not as a plug to myself, because I've kind of stepped a little bit away from that, but that's
But
what
that
I
is one of the services you
yeah,
offer.
that is one of the things that I do, not as much anymore, but where you work with companies where you're like, hey, listen, let's teach them how to like have a difficult conversation. Let's
Yep.
teach them a little bit about self-awareness. Let's teach them about intention.
Yeah.
And they just don't. And so what we end up doing is we see these people who are promoted early in their career, and then the golden handcuffs. So it's like, oh, all of these perks from, and or maybe it's really a power trip or whatever it is, right? So they continue to go higher and higher and higher, and that is how we continue to have these kind of toxic workplaces, number one, that are bred, because ultimately these horrible bosses pull people in who are like them, that validate their behavior, they're yes men, and they surround themselves with these individuals, or they are sanctioned by their organization. And I would really love to get your thoughts on that. Like, why is it that so many organizations, why you believe so many organizations, even when concerns are brought to them, tolerate these leaders, right? Where they look the other way. Um, so that's where I see like a lot of this breeding ground. But I would also, other than like getting our thoughts on why we think organizations, or helping peel back the curtain for the people who are listening, as to, because the thing that I hear all of the time, they're like, HR protects managers. And as a manager, I never felt protected by HR. I was like, ooh, I feel like I am well out in the wind.
Uh,
So I think that there's definitely a very difference of opinion there. But then I also want to maybe give the people some strategies to cope with some of these bosses and
mm,
figure out, is it a self-awareness problem? And I have a strategy that I give to a lot of my clients that I'm going to just give to the people today.
I love that. And my thing, Linda, is I also wanted to talk about a way of maybe flagging early.
Hmm.
My best attempt at sort of my career's worth of experience of how to identify if it's going to be horrible boss, toxic workplace
Hmm.
experience early in the process. But let's do this. I mean, first, like quick response to the question or topic that you posed of why. I think a universal, so every company is different, every circumstance is different. Why
Hmm.
are these things allowed to exist? Could look different everywhere. But I think universal truth is often that it's just a sign that great employee experience and great management is not being prioritized.
Right.
Right? Clearly it's not being prioritized. Why is it not being prioritized? Again, while every workplace is different, I have noticed a trend. I think one thing to look at then is whether your company is still maybe early, founder led, even tracing back to the way the company is funded. So
Hmm.
if it's like an early founder led company, maybe there's angel investors on board, or like the founder self funded or something like this. A lot of times the culture in those companies, believe it or not, I found could actually be positive and kind of infectious and exciting. But if it's not, and if bad management is being tolerated, probably it's sort of a power struggle or a lack of awareness from the founder CEO. And the culture is just being
Yeah.
set in a way that isn't healthy. And maybe no one's calling that founder on it. What I've also experienced in my career is at a slightly more, well, I've never worked for big corporations, but a slightly bigger company. And once venture capital money is involved, I think a lot of times the reason it's tolerated is, again, it gets back to prioritization. And when you double click further, it's senior management always allowing itself to always be in this moment of crisis and
Hmm.
of That's important, and we agree. We will address
But
that soon. Next.
yeah,
It's always the next
but we're
thing to be
bleeding
addressed.
cash, so
Yeah, but we're
too
bleeding
bad.
cash. We have a revenue. We have a retention target to hit for this quarter, and so on and so forth. Public companies I actually don't have the experience of working for, but I've heard that dynamic gets even worse because every quarter is just about the next quarter's earning reports, and so then these small, I'm using air quotes, issues of like horrible bosses and
Yeah,
experiences people are having, or employees quitting left and right, and you're trying to convey like, no, this is the same as worrying about the revenue goal, but it just doesn't always break through. um,
yeah, yeah,
but what I want to do, Linda, also is just kind of flag my general trend I've noticed as for identifying these situations, and then maybe
yeah,
it'll flow in turn of, because like it's kind of chronologically how to prevent it or flag it, but if you still find yourself in one of those situations, how to cope. Um, my thought on trying to group everything together that I think actually could be identified, or if we're being honest with ourselves as early as
hmm
interviews, is if you're interviewing with the person who will be your manager, do you notice that person tends to make you feel bigger or smaller? Do they
mm.
tend to
hmm
make you feel empowered or diminished? And again, like
yeah,
most thoughts I share, I think it's probably one or more people who kind of helped me to clarify this thinking over time, because there's almost an infinite amount of moments and stories and anecdotes and like great moments and tough moments. And you could just like cycle through all of them. And it's hard sometimes to take a step back. But somebody I was chatting with one time was like, yeah, no, what it sounds like to me is textbook case of, if you have a manager who's making you feel diminished every day and smaller, and they're doing that in so many ways, the way that they speak to
hmm
you, the way that they deal with your setbacks, and also the way they deal with your victories, is then trying to almost diminish your part in it and run with the credit, right? And then other managers you find are always empowering you. They're making you
yeah,
feel bigger, puffing your chest out, saying, yeah, I can do this, and I'm great, and I'm adding a ton of value, and you have a win, and they only want you to get the credit, or they have a win as a manager, but they still want to at least share it with you. So to some extent, we think about it and go like, how are we going to know until we actually work at that place? I do agree. We talked about another episode, like checking Glassdoor reviews and things like
hmm
that, talking to friends who work there for sure. But I also think if we're being honest with ourselves, we sometimes know as early as the interview, like, does this person make me feel bigger or smaller? And if they
yeah,
make you feel smaller, and again, to your point, even if the salary is going to be great and you want to turn a blind eye, like maybe I did once or twice in my career, don't, and kind of own that part too, and maybe try to avoid those situations. But with that said, back to you.
yeah. Well, that's really made me reflect on my interview skills.
Mm.
I always said, like,
That's
if you can
interesting.
survive an interview with me, then you can survive this job, right? But not because I try to make people feel small, but I
No,
am
no.
very intense in an interview, and
Uh-huh.
I do like to ask tough questions because
Yeah.
I'm like, if you
Yeah.
can, if you get out of this and have tough questions, and because we came up through customer experience, customer support, like you've got to have thick skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get through the interview and you still want to be here, I'm like, then you're like, I promise you I get much better after this. I'm definitely not a first impression kind of person. I'm like
Yeah.
third or fourth, and then you're like, yeah, I think I like her, right? Pretty sure I'm a
it's
big
it's
fan.
totally fair. And you raise a wrinkle in the method I propose, but what I'd still maintain is after you ask those difficult questions, I'd still bet the house that you show some empathy and compassion and recognition of the other person, and even like their effort to answer your difficult question. I don't
Yeah.
know. You can tell me I'm
Yeah.
wrong. I would still bet that there's some humanity shown in those moments versus some people who ask those questions and then just for effect like ignore you or look off in the distance like,
Yeah.
interesting, and
Interesting.
staring holes through you just to make you feel
Yeah.
small.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's definitely not me. And I did, especially the higher I got in my career, I would try to be like really casual with my posture, or like,
mhm.
because I am so intense, I was trying to like present
Yeah,
a little bit like you don't have to like
yes.
be terrified of this experience.
That's
So,
good.
uh yeah, so I think that one of the things we should really kind of talk about, I wanted this episode to be a little prescriptive for the people, because here's the thing: we can all acknowledge that horrible bosses exist, and we can acknowledge that we never know when they're going to crop up. In all honesty, we could have somebody who is really great at the beginning and then becomes a really horrible boss, or something of that
Yeah, or your
nature,
boss,
right?
or you could do what I said and do it really well, and then your boss is changed on you, and like you're first or third week. So yeah, just
Yeah.
acknowledging you're right. You're right.
So
These things
so the
happen.
thing is they can crop up anytime. And ultimately what I want for the people, the humans that are listening, is for them to walk away with some kind of a strategy for this. This isn't an episode of commiseration. If it would have been, I would have unpacked a lot more. Uh, right? And I think you would have unpacked a lot more. But
So
really, I
hopefully
wanted
people
this.
kept listening through the communication part to get to
they're
the real
like,
part.
they're like, what else did that boss say to you? And I'm like, oof, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Uh, and but the thing is I think first and foremost, before we dive into some strategies on how to manage bosses, and in another episode we talked about micromanaging, and we can touch on that a little bit as well as some strategies for the people. The thing that I want to call out, and this is very, very critical, and I'm going to open with, if this person is causing harm, and I mean like physical harm, mental harm, that is never acceptable. So if you feel that you're in an environment where you fear for your safety, that is a very different conversation, right? We joked a little bit about the Horrible Bosses movie, and how just like, I wish we could watch it. And I'm like, no, I'd be wildly uncomfortable. Um, if you remember Jennifer Aniston's character in that, I mean, she just made me so uncomfortable. If you are in a situation where there's sexual harassment, there's physical harassment, you feel unsafe, those are things you absolutely must report, right? You need to get out of that environment and you must report that behavior. It is never acceptable. I had a client who once talked about how their boss threw a phone at them.
Oh my God.
Not acceptable, right? I had
Yeah.
another client who talked about how their boss was showing them inappropriate pictures on their cell phone.
Oh my gosh, it's awful.
Those things are not
Yeah, these
appropriate.
are
And
pretty
so,
black and white
yeah,
situations. Needs to be
this,
reported, acted on.
yes, yes. And please, 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 because this is another thing I learned this last week. If it is sexual harassment, please report it to a state agency. Please report it to the EEOC. There are resources available to you, because it turns out that although sexual harassment is unlawful, companies do not have a duty to report. Well, like 95% of companies. So schools, when you're dealing with children, healthcare, those government agencies do have a duty to report. But private businesses and even public businesses, if they don't deal with certain sectors of individuals, do not have a requirement to report something that could be unlawful, which is
Well,
really gross.
yeah, that's very interesting and also concerning, and
Yeah.
something I agree with you. Most people don't realize. So then that leaves so much of the decision making just inward,
Yeah.
internally in
Yeah.
that organization. So many
It's like,
factors, and
problem, meet the rug. Like,
yeah, yep,
right under the
right.
rug, right? And
So many
and so
possible reasons
often,
to look the other
yeah.
way.
And so often these, like, somebody could be genuinely causing harm, and if the employee quits, they don't do anything to the person who was causing harm.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, problem solved itself. The person who was complaining, the victim, has left the organization. So if you find yourself in a situation of sexual harassment, physical harassment, where you feel unsafe, please, please, please report it, because your company does not have an obligation to do so.
Mm.
And we're making the people better.
No,
So
100%.
left turn. Let's talk about a strategy, though. Let's give the people a couple strategies to dealing with horrible bosses, right? And again, similar to toxic workplaces, horrible is very much a personal feeling, right? It's maybe you don't, maybe your boss doesn't acknowledge your accomplishments when you do big things, right? And I will say that this boss had a lot of other problems. It wasn't just because I didn't get a good atta girl. But maybe it's a situation like that. Maybe your boss is pure chaos. So they come in and it feels like the Tasmanian devil is in your office, and like things are spinning and like the office, and maybe that's your perception of a horrible boss. Maybe it's they say awkward things at awkward times, or they're ultimately like very sarcastic, as I point at myself. So there's a lot of things. And I think one of the tactics that I give my clients is, I'm like, first of all, let's decide where it's causing. And when I said, does it cause harm? Yes, it causes harm because it bugs you, but it's not actually physically unlawful causing those types of harm. And yes, it takes a mental toll on you, but there is a moment of self-awareness and sitting up and saying like, okay, is this something that is causing harm, or is this something that just irritates me?
Mm.
If it's the latter, this tactic works every time.
Okay.
So the first thing you have to do is remember you are not going to change them. This person
Mm.
is not going to change. If you're waiting for an Attagirl, if you're waiting for them to notice like all of your hard work, if you're waiting that for them to proactively approach you about something when they are always reactive, that's not going to change.
Mm.
Now, if you give them feedback, you have meaningful conversations and they're self-aware enough to like not make it a checkbox, then it could modify, but it's not going to change. We're not going to change somebody else. Number two, we need to remember that this person operates on a different scale than you do. So often I have clients who will say like, why do they do it? I would never behave that way. Why would they say it this way? I would never say it this way. I would never make people feel this way. We need to recognize that that's projection.
Mm-hmm.
You're projecting your ethics, your values, your work style on somebody who is not you.
Oh, interesting.
So we
So
have
when
to
you say
recognize those
different
things.
scale, I think I just want to confirm sort of like a different wavelength or a different framework almost, just a different way of thinking, right? And so it's going to be very hard to like,
Yeah.
yeah, instantaneously or to your point, possibly ever have them
Yeah.
kind of join you on your wavelength, right?
Yes. And so we
Mm.
first of all need to understand like what level of projection is happening, like how we're projecting our stuff on them,
Mm.
our baggage, our experience, our desires, right? And we can still communicate with them. Hey, I really need some praise. Or, hey, I really need this from you. Hey, I would really love it if you would show up for me this way. I'm all about meaningful conversations. But at the end of the day, this person is still this person. And if they don't see things, if you are on different levels or different spaces, they're not going to see it your way. Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to turn pain into pleasure.
Wow.
And this is how we do it, right? And this works in so many different facets. I have had clients call me and they're like, I can't believe how well this works. We are going to acknowledge that this person is exactly who they are. They consistently show up and tell you exactly who they are, and you just keep expecting them to show up in a different way. And so you are adding insult to injury because you're like, maybe today they're going to show up the way that I really want them to show up. And then they don't. And then you're pissed and you're like, if you could just show up this way, it would mean something to me. And they're oblivious. Again, they're not giving you that thought because they are caught up in their own Tasmanian devil ways.
Yeah.
Right?
This really hits, and maybe it makes it even more frustrating because you feel like you've communicated things or kind of like dropped signals that in your world and your wavelength would have been exceedingly obvious. Like, hey, I've really indicated I need this kind of support or for you to show up this way in our next one-on-one. But to your point, it's like completely lost on this person. And to your point, maybe they've been making that abundantly clear to you for a long time that it's going to be lost on them. And you just keep having unreasonable expectations in a way, which is an interesting reframing that puts a little accountability back on the report. And again, I'm thinking about when I was on the report side of this, a very interesting reframing that's kind of empowering in an interesting way.
Yeah. So they are going to keep showing up this way, right? Yeah. Because they have shown you exactly who they are.
Right.
But you keep going like, maybe today they're going to wake up and be different. Yeah. So we are going to celebrate every time they show up exactly as they are.
Amazing.
And we can do this with a number of ways, right? If you are, and I like a physical manifestation of this. So whether it's you have tick marks on a calendar, on a sheet, on your desk, my favorite is to make it decorative because I like pretty things, right? So go get like a nice glass bowl or go get some kind of container and think of it almost like a swear jar.
Hmm.
Okay. Every time they show up exactly as they are, exactly as the human that they are, again, not causing harm, but they're Tasmanian devil. This is what we're thinking. I want you to put some kind of token in this jar, right? Whether it's a glass bead, whether it's somebody ordered poop emojis. Somebody I know ordered poop emojis and they put poop emojis in there. It was a jar full of shit.
Yeah, I was thinking more
Um,
like cool glass marbles, you know, the ones you play with as kids.
I have a client who who does this, and number one, she's in office, so she really enjoys like when people come in and they're like, what is this? And she gets to make up new reasons why it
That's
exists
so
on her
funny.
desk and why
Uh-huh.
the levels continue to vary, right? But she puts something in this glass jar, and then the instruction is once the glass jar or once the tick sheet or whatever this physical manifestation is, whatever this vessel is for you, once it is full, I want you to go do something for you, and something big. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to have a donut. I mean, if a donut's a big deal, have a donut. But like this one client who it's worked so well for, I mean, it's worked for many clients, but it's worked really well for her, likes really expensive handbags, like really expensive
Okay.
handbags, right? And she puts the bead in every time the boss shows up exactly as they are, right?
Hmm.
And when they don't show up, she's disappointed. When they show up differently, she's actually disappointed because there is a payout for her.
Yes.
For her to say, "Hey, listen, I'm allowing you to be you and I'm going to be me and I'm going to celebrate every time you show up as you." And then I get a payout, right?
Hmm.
I get this big thing. It turns it number one into a game, and I love a good, I love a good board game, video games too. But it gamifies the situation, but it also allows you to just be like, hey, good job. You showed up as you today. Like, way to go. And you get to celebrate that thing. And she
Yeah,
really is disappointed when the boss
I
shows
know.
up and like does something different
Yeah, it's all
outside of
hitting
like,
me. Right.
yeah, loves
That would
it,
be
loves it.
disappointing. You,
She really, but the thing is
yeah.
the clients that have adopted this and have done
Hmm.
this, I will go months without hearing from them.
Yeah.
And then they pop up on my calendar and I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, I just want to let you know that I am so happy. I have learned how to allow these people to be them. I've learned how to manage them. I've learned how to put them in their own box and no longer let that thing negatively impact
Mm.
me.
I'm bought in. I think it's brilliant. I think it's genius. First of all, on a lighter note, I was thinking about like what would my thing be? Unsurprisingly, it'd probably be like a case of Spindrift because I'm
Hmm.
obsessed with my beverages. Spindrifts are my
Hmm.
favorite. I mean, it would be so funny if I think back to the boss and the source of some of my stories, and if I sat in a one-on-one and they showed up exactly as they always had, and if I thought, "Yep," and if I put a little marble in and I'm like, "Ooh, you know, two more of these, I got a new case of Spindrift," I'd just be really happy. It could be silly or it could be something bigger, like the hand, whatever it might be, but it actually would be super helpful. And I'd imagine like I always do this, and Lynda, you always welcome or push me to do this. Is like, what would the pushback be? And I kind of like resolved it myself. I think like my guess, just kind of double click in when you're really working with the client, and the way thing that would make it work for me is I push myself to separate out what I truly believe are addressable points of feedback and
Hmm.
improvement,
Hmm.
which those are going to be there, maybe somewhere in the margins or like certain topics. But if you pushed yourself as the report suffering through this to kind of put those in one bucket and like we'll keep working on those, what does the bucket look like of all the behaviors, all the things, the ways your bosses are showing up? Or if you really pushed yourself and you were honest with yourself, do you really think those are going to change? And that might be a pretty big bucket. And you might start to identify it's like things in those bucket that you, against all logic, just keep hoping and praying and willing
Hmm.
to change, and
Hmm.
they're just not going to. And I think that's kind of the bucket you're focusing on. And if you do that, you, yeah, you kind of flip it and reward yourself for the inevitable happening. That's it's kind of brilliant.
And the thing is like if you get to that point where this isn't fun, or this again is causing harm, or you're like, I really can't take it, and making a game out of this is just not working, then it is time to go, right?
Mm.
But the thing is if we can shift our perspective, if we can shift and say, hey, this could be a moment of projection, or this could be this thing, why don't I try looking at this through a different lens?
Yep.
Why don't I try shifting this thing? And the thing is like, if you can't live with it, then it's probably time to go. It's time to
Yep.
change positions. It's time to get out from under this. But if at the end of the day you're like, I actually can't wait, I'm going to go to the expensive massage place, right? Once my glass bowl is full, like
Mhm.
whatever that is, or I'm going to get 3 cases of spindrift, like whatever that is. And if you still find joy in it, and
Mhm.
you will find that your overall atmosphere, because sometimes, especially when we're categorizing horrible bosses, if it is just a behavior that irks you, and is just something where you're like, ugh, you're so oblivious and you never do the things,
Mm. Yep.
and they keep showing up that way, then maybe there is a way for us to just kind of put them in that box, or manage them in a way that no longer lets it affect our mood and ruin our experience.
Yep. I love it. Genius.
So that's the tactic. That's the free little bit of feedback, but I will tell you it works every time. And I will tell you how I actually came up with this.
Hmm.
So I hate Cybertrucks. Like, I hate them. With like a
My
fire
kids
of a
call them the
thousand
diamond
suns.
car. Like, look,
Yeah.
another diamond car.
True story. So there's this person who owns a nursery down the street from me, like a plant nursery. Not a children's nursery, like a plant nursery. And they every now and then, um, the Cybertruck goes down the street and it's pulling a dumpster behind it, and it's comical. It's very funny to me.
Amazing.
It makes my whole day. But anyway, so I hate Cybertrucks. They just make me angry. And when I would see them, I would allow it to affect my mood. I was just like, and I was like, this is so dumb. Why am I letting this inanimate object affect my mood? Why
Mhm.
am I like, it's going to continue to look the way that it is. The people are going to continue to buy it. Like, I can't affect this
This is
change.
amazing.
So how can I take a moment and celebrate it? And I've turned it into a game. Every time I see it, like if I see 3 in a day, like that's a winning
It's a
day.
great day.
It's
Yeah.
I get the hat trick, and I'm like, it's a great day. And my whole family looks for them now, and they'll be like, Mom, did you see it? Or even like my niece and nephew look for them. And if we see 3, everyone's like, it's gonna be a good day. Or if we see
Yeah.
one that's been like modified or wrapped, we're like, it's a
Wow.
good day. And it's taken this moment of like pure pain for me, and
Yeah.
something that was affecting my mood, to making it this moment of like, yes, I
That's
saw the
really funny.
Cybertruck.
You know what it makes me think of, Linda? Uh, all roads back to Linda, as we say, is your hot under the collar exercise and but
Yes.
it's really interesting because I genuinely was just thinking about like that would be the max kind of application or test of this technique is like, could you even apply this technique to things that get you really hot under the collar? So like for me, for example, you know, some weeks I resist the negative and I flip it back to the
Mm-hmm.
positive,
Mm-hmm.
hilariously, cutely,
Mm-hmm.
of course. But let's say something that really does get me hot under the collar is like driving, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
driving, road rage kind of stuff is difficult for everyone. But I think true to my character, what gets me hot under the collar are people who just illogically, aggressively, pull maneuvers like speeding up to then just cut you off to be like one car ahead, and it
Yeah.
accomplishes nothing, and
Yep.
it's frankly like unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
But you could tell they're just so satisfied with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm thinking of like every time someone pulls a maneuver like that, I could be like, amazing. Like I
Good for
could go
you.
home and put a marble in the jar.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
not only get the spin drift, but maybe the one that you could only get on the website itself. It's more
Ooh,
expensive. Special flavor.
fancy.
Special
Fancy.
flavor.
Yeah.
Blueberry lemonade spindrift because I encountered two jerks on the road today.
I'm not quite sure why Spindrift is not sponsoring this episode. So I think maybe that's our next, big hurdle, Spindrift.
Or will they?
Or will they?
Manifestation.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, I think that wraps up the episode to talk about the things that are hot under the collar. Are we officially putting that as the hot under the collar thing for you, Joe?
That'll be my entry for this week, and I actually participated, and it happened organically, trying to action your pearl of wisdom.
Yes. Yes. Amazing.
What's yours?
Ugh. Well, we're going to keep it. Well, no, I was thinking food themed, but yours wasn't food themed. Mine is food themed. I do not like oversauced items.
Oh my gosh, I love oversauced items.
So
All
as
sauces.
I'm a Libra. I like all things in balance, right?
Oh my God.
And I cannot stand when things are oversauced, over cheesed, over flavored, over perfumed, like any of it. And I went to dinner last night. Mike and I had an impromptu date night.
Nice.
And we went to, also, like, the price of Italian food is also has me really hot under the collar because it's fucking pasta. But anyway, I digress. So we went to this place that is like, you go in and it has all of the best of state awards and all of the things, and it's fine. It's overpriced and fine.
Yeah.
And I ordered my dish, and it was tasty, but it had too much fucking sauce. It was almost soup.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there's too, and I had I end up like having a visceral response to it because I'm like, there's too much sauce. And honestly, like my Caesar had been overdressed as well.
It was building, in all fairness.
Yeah, it was like,
this issue was building as the meal
so anyway,
progressed.
Oversauced. I don't like my pizza oversauced, any of it.
So I like all of it oversauced.
Ugh.
And I wonder if it's because I'm in Aries now. I have been really trying to get more into this whole, what do you call it? Astrological sign or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just never been my thing. But I'm very and genuinely, I've been very open to it and thinking that this could be like one of the million things, I just haven't exposed myself to that could explain certain things in life. Really into it. But you're really pushing it now, Lynda. You're telling me that people's sauce under or over sauce quantity preferences, that traces back to our signs too. This might be a step too far for me, partner.
It's fine. It's fine. Hot under the collar. But it is like, for me, I like all things.
Hot under the collar.
I like all things in balance. And I blame my sign of a Libra, but it was oversauced. Delicious. Yeah. And the pasta was cooked perfectly, which is always very important, but it was oversauced, and I do not approve.
No, definitely not. The price of pasta or chicken parmesan could be that could be a whole episode right there.
It could be a whole, like, if I want to talk about like the most like opportunistic food is Italian food, right? Because they price it so high.
Yeah.
And it's fucking pasta, right?
Well, so I don't know, you might have some of this too. One thing with like the dot in the world where I live is I still have enough exposure to New York City prices. But thankfully, day to day, I'm in the sticks of New Jersey now, relatively speaking. So I actually was just thinking about this the other day, like local spot, no frills, best service ever, best Italian food ever. And for about, let's say $20, as an example, you could get a huge plate of chicken parm, comes with garlic bread, salad, probably something else. Best service, best food ever. Like, okay, cool. I mean, I accept that this costs more than when I was growing up, but that feels fine. And then you go into Manhattan and maybe like the chicken parm with nothing else included is like $38. Yeah. And it's tiny and mediocre quality and nothing is included. So that and the salad and the garlic bread's like 50 or 60. It's crazy. Oh, yeah. It's completely out of whack. It's like a multiple as expensive.
I know. I do hope that you will leave me the name of that Italian restaurant for when I am staying at your abode.
Trust me, I've thought about it already.
I want all the recommendations.
Yes.
All right.
Mess with you and leave you the really expensive chicken farm wreck.
I'll just walk out. I'll be like, I don't owe you anything.
Bastard.
Okay, well, on that note, for
On
people
that
who are
note,
still with us, like, follow, subscribe, do the
look
things.
at that. You get
Yeah.
surprise chicken cost of pasta and chicken parm episodes embedded in the other episode. It's
Yes.
just, we try to deliver value.
All the value.
Yes. All right. Until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.